Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, so as Paul said, I'll be kind of going over my journey from student to now, luckily, in industry. So yeah, this is my talk, Journey into Art. A little bit about myself. So my name is Paul Alex Nita. Everybody kind of calls me Alex. I'm a junior environment artist at Sumo Newcastle, and I graduated Southwest College in 2021. Over this kind of presentation, I'm going to go over kind of before, during, and after college, kind of the things that I did, some tips that helped me along the way, job searching and getting in, and some things that I did, college versus industry, and then finally leaving it with mental health, which I think is something very important, especially us as artists. So before college, I mostly did paintings and kind of traditional art from a young age. So naturally, my thought process was becoming a concept artist, since in my mind that was the easiest transition. But after some time, I kind of thought about it, and I joined Paul at Southwest College and kind of got my feet wet within 3D. So then I was like, oh, 3D is kind of fun. So that's what I did before college, and also helping run different gaming events in different communities, while also kind of putting my fingers in different modding kind of communities, with one of them being the Arma 3 community, where I was able to work on with a bunch of other friends on Operation Desert Rhino, which definitely taught me a lot about working with people. And I definitely recommend people, if they're unsure about modding for different games and stuff, it definitely helps you both socially, and it's a talking point within interviews as well, which I'm going to go over later. So during college, so this is just an outline of the courses that I did with Paul at Southwest College. So I started off with level 3. This was 1 year games and then 1 year movie production and photography. Then I moved on to H&D creative media production, which was kind of like a broad overview of 3D modeling and animation and stuff. For anybody here that doesn't know what H&D is, it's kind of like your foundation degree. It's your first year or two of your university. Afterwards, I took a gap year out to kind of focus on myself, and it was also, at the time, the college didn't offer a BA honors course until the year after, so it kind of fitted in pretty well. And then, yeah, I finished off with doing BA Visual Media Arts with Paul. Oh, God. So starting things off, this was some of the old work that I did. Looking back on it is, yeah. So at the start of the year, joining the course and stuff, I decided to create a katana just to kind of see where I was and kind of show Paul and the other tutors where I was. People at work told me that this is a telescope, so clearly I didn't do a very good job of a katana. But yeah, that was kind of me at the start of the year in 2015. And then 2017, after doing that course, that is where I was, which very addicted to Hunt Showdown, and decided to create one of the carts from it. Moving on to HND, yet again, still addicted to Hunt Showdown. Brilliant game if you guys haven't played it. Hashtag not sponsored. I decided to create a prop just to kind of keep on that similar theme and try to have a theme throughout my portfolio. But during my time at HND, I kind of wanted to explore more into environment art. And that's something that I wanted to transition from more, instead of becoming a prop artist, become an environment artist, which at the end of the year, I decided to recreate my office that I had at the time. During my gap year, that's where I started to really kind of hone down into the environment art sort of category. So I partook in the King Arthur's challenge on ArtStation, which this was my submission. Looking back on it, there's many things that I would change now, but it was definitely a really nice learning experience. And that's something that I definitely recommend people do. Go off and try and do different challenges because it restricts what your outcome is. So you've got a couple of restrictions that normally you wouldn't put on yourself. So it's always good to kind of practice those. So this was my first environment that I did outside of college. And then my second one, I wanted to kind of go completely left field and do a sci-fi, but at the same time, trying not to do a generic sci-fi corridor, which looking back on it is a generic sci-fi corridor. But yet again, this was a really learning experience because I feel like this environment kind of put me out there on Twitter. That's where I started getting more interactions and stuff, which is a topic that I'll be going over a little bit later in the talk. And then this was my last environment that I created before coming back onto the onto the BA honors degree. I wanted to finish off this environment just to make sure to have like a goalpost that I can look back and be like, okay, this is where I was before the course, and this is where I am after the course. So kind of like a milestone per se. And then I joined the BA honors course. I was able, luckily enough, since I did the first 2 years, I was able to go into my final year. So this is where I started looking into more technical sort of aspects. This is an environment that I had the privilege to create from a concept artist called George Wiley. He gave me permission for this, so thank you very much. This was a really heavy learning experience, kind of learning how to work with perspective and making sure that the concept art and the 3D environment kind of match one-to-one. I think this was my final major project. I'm not too sure. But it was definitely something significant, which we were tasked to create a theater inspired by Martin Hoff. I definitely overscoped this, and looking back, I would definitely make something smaller.
This was your environment art module.
There you go, environment art module. This was a very heavy learning experience where I got more technical using trim sheets and understanding VFX and a lot more kind of technical stuff that naturally I wouldn't really touch. And then some more kind of screenshot renders. This is also, I think, my first time sculpting, which was the little Buddha statue that you see bottom left. That was a pain, but it was definitely fun. And then I kind of moved into making a couple of little props, just to kind of not have a environment only. So kind of focusing in, making sure that I can showcase that I can have a prop that is extremely detailed, which is where the tape recorder comes in. And then also the grand piano that I did, which this was one of my hero assets for that environment that I previously showed. So that was kind of my college experience. Definitely fortunate to have done that. And some tips that I would definitely recommend, and I know that these are somewhat generic, is keep on top of your work. The amount of times that I saw students just kind of say that, oh, just do it tomorrow, or we can do it over the weekend. Sure, you can do it until over the weekend or whatever it may be, but if you keep on top of your stuff, that means that you're not going to have to worry about it later, because you never know what could come up later. And that's where keeping a time schedule is very important, because you know that you can dedicate this amount of time at that section of the week. But it also helps to know when to take breaks and when not to, because it's very easy to kind of get lost in your work and kind of not take care of yourself, like eating or drinking or even standing up, which I know that I still do that to a certain extent, especially at work. So yeah, don't be afraid to explore things on your own. I see a lot of students kind of keeping back and keeping to the school like curriculum, and being like, oh, we don't have to learn this until next semester, or oh, we can learn about it next year, or whatever it may be. Don't be afraid to kind of go out of your way and learn the things that you want to learn at the time that you want to learn. And alongside that, make sure that you start looking into things that isn't 3D or games related, because you will soon realize that you're going to get burnt out and you're not going to have that drive or passion that you normally do to create or finish something. So that's something very important to keep in mind. But there is going to be days where you don't feel motivated, you don't want to touch anything, pretty much you just want to chill. But there is work that you need to do. So this is where having a schedule is important, because sticking to a schedule creates habits. And by having a habit, you create discipline. So even if you don't want to do something, you're still going to do it. And then that way you're still progressing. But it's very important to always have a fine kind of balance, because if you're too harsh on yourself, then that could really impact you mentally. But at the same time, if you're kind of slacking off, you're not going to be where you want to be. Sorry for the flashbang, but this is the time schedule that I had at college that I kind of drafted up on Google Calendar. I kind of blurred out a couple of names here, just privacy reasons and stuff. Just, yeah, Paul, don't sue me. But I had different time schedules for different sections. So the stuff in blue is usually the classes, and then the stuff in orange is usually the free time that I would have in between the classes to kind of do what I'm doing. And since I kind of love doing 3D and stuff, I wanted to work every single day, but at the same time, not kind of overkilling myself. So doing 10 to 7 is what worked for me, because that way I didn't have to wake up super early and feel very groggy, but I wasn't staying too late afterwards. And once that 7 o'clock hit, I would put everything away. I don't care if I was in the middle of something or whatever. 7 o'clock hit, that was kind of my rest day. I could go off and play Call of Duty or Overwatch or whatever it may be. So after college, this was something I felt very lost after college, because I'm a person that likes having a routine and having, I don't know if guidance is the proper word for it, but definitely having like a structure to your day-to-day life. So I kind of sat down after taking a break from college and thinking, okay, what can I do to stand out from the crowd, and what can I do to kind of gain like eyes on my work. So I decided to create a piece that had everything that I've learned up until this point. So from all the previous years and all the different techniques and stuff, create one piece that had the majority of it, and then look at other students that graduated around the same time and see what they're doing and who is gaining traction, who isn't, and in a way compare myself, but at the same time, this is very dangerous, because comparison is the thief of joy. And if you compare yourself to people, then you're never going to be happy, right? So you have to have a healthy kind of mindset about it. It's good to look at what other people are doing, but it's not necessarily good to be like, oh, I wish I was that person, or comparing your work to their work, because everybody has a different journey. So what I did here might not work for the next person in line. And the only way to find out is trial and error. But if you're going to sit there and compare yourself to other people that you look up to, it's going to be very damaging, both creatively and also mentally. But it's very important to kind of remind yourself that you only need one good piece to stand out for it to kind of blow, right? For me, it was this environment. This environment got a lot of traction and a lot of retweets, support, people kind of reaching out to me, asking how I did certain things or complimenting what I did. Speedtree also retweeted, which helped me a ton. And there was a couple of other articles and stuff that retweeted my work. So you only need one. If you look at other people as well, they usually have one environment that kind of sticks out as the kind of golden ticket. So on your way to your golden ticket or on your way to find a job, it's good to keep a record of what you're doing. I personally have a spreadsheet of all the different positions and jobs and locations that I applied to. So then that way I know, okay, I've applied to this company. I'm not going to touch it for the next 6 months. And that's something that you need to keep in mind. When you're applying to places, don't apply. And then if they say no, don't reapply. Give it some time. Usually, rule of thumb is 6 months to a year. Or if you drastically change your portfolio within that time. So having a spreadsheet or something like that definitely helps you keep on track of everything. But it's very disheartening because a lot of times you do get ghosted. A lot of times you do get the no. But it's important to kind of remind yourself that, you know, things happen for a reason. And when people say no, it doesn't really mean no, or it doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It means that you're not what they're looking for at the moment. And that's something that I found out with Sumo, because before I got this job, I applied to Sumo twice. Yeah, this was the third time. So yeah, twice before, which they just said, no, we're not, you don't really fit what we're currently looking. So, you know, things can change. A good thing is to always surround yourself with supportive people. Now, what I mean by this is people that are in the same boat as you, or people that are where you want to be. Because what I find is that kind of drives you to be amongst them and kind of work your ass off to be where you want to be, and seeing other people and where they are, for me, was a driving factor. And I was telling myself that they're happy where they are, so why can't I be happy where I am? So that kind of made me work a bit harder on that sort of end. And yeah, the most important thing is don't give up. And I definitely don't think I would be here in the position that I am now, which I feel very privileged to be, if I give it up. There was definitely times where I was like, this is too competitive. I'm not good enough for it. A lot of kind of things that you kind of tell yourself. But it was having those supportive people around me definitely kind of made me get up and try again. So while job searching, these are the sort of avenues that I took. So Hitmaker, for anybody that doesn't know, it's a really good website which has every single, well, don't quote me on that, but most 3D and esports related, pretty much just game industry, like jobs and positions and internships. I'm pretty sure it's worldwide. Yet again, don't quote me on that. So yeah, it's pretty good. Indeed, LinkedIn really surprised me because I've heard a lot of kind of not so good things about it, especially for game dev. But what I find was I was getting people were reaching out to me from different companies, whether it be an art director or HR or whatever, asking if I was available for a spot or if I wanted to have an interview or whatever. So that definitely kind of took me by surprise. Twitter is really big. Yeah, it's Twitter. Company careers pages, GameIndustry.biz, and Friends in the Industry. All of these are kind of your generic, but kind of good to keep in the back of your head and check them regularly, especially if there's a company that you want to work at. So getting your first steps in. Usually this breaks down into two things: interviews and art tests. So some interview tips that helped me and that I used. Interviews work both ways, and that is something that you need to remind yourself. While you are there to make sure that you fit the company, you're also there to know if this is the right place for you to work. So make sure that you ask the things that you want to know about the company. and have like a list of questions, or even if it's just one or two questions about the company or how they work or what it's like working there, or anything, just so you know that, you know, where you're going in, you're going to like it. Do your research before you go into an interview. I've heard some really horror stories about this, which, you know, it doesn't take long to kind of Google a company, especially if it's a AAA, AA, somebody well known, and usually you can pick up their games for relatively cheap as well. You know, having a talking point, and showing that you know previous titles or current titles that they're doing, kind of goes a long way. And also just remember that they're people too. Personally, I found that before I got into industry, I put people on like pedestals and kind of saw them above me, which was kind of taxing mentally. But if you just remember that they're people too, you know, they've got family, they've got a dog, kids, whatever it may be, like they're like you, they're just working there. It definitely helps kind of breaking that sort of ice or fear that you might feel within an interview. Art tests, this is something that I had to do at previous companies. Yeah, communication is key. Some of the art tests that I got in the past, that wasn't very clear on what they kind of wanted, and they usually word it in a certain way. So if you're not sure about it, make sure that you ask. Usually you'd have somebody from HR or a senior artist or a point of contact that if you've got any questions or anything, you can ask them. It's always good to ask and make sure that what they want is what you're giving them. And that's the thing, is always highlight the things that they want and focus on them. So some art tests might be very technical, so using, I don't know, like different techniques, and kind of focusing on them is more important than having a pretty render, right? But some other companies like having a pretty render, so going too in depth with the technical stuff mightn't be that beneficial within the art test, because that's not exactly what they're looking for. This is a little slide that I wanted to kind of add in with my time at Sumo. And it's probably, and I'm not being paid to say this, but it's probably the best 9 months of my life. I've only been in the industry for 9 months, and I don't know where the time has went. I get to work with wonderful people, and it's just amazing, and always learning as well, which is something that you're going to realize very soon, is once you kind of break away from the college sort of mindset, you're always going to be learning 24/7. There's not a day that you don't learn something new. And I can confirm, and this is coming from me, so your experience might be different, but I can confirm that the sacrifices and the hard work that I did the previous 5, 10, 15 years definitely are worth. So just stick at it. Don't give up. And you definitely have this in the bag. And as I said, you know, a no doesn't mean no. It's more so a not right now. Some of the things became apparent once I got in the industry, so I wanted to kind of outline some stuff. College can't teach you everything. You know, you're in there for a limited amount of time, so there's so much information, and the industry changes so quick that it's hard for colleges to kind of keep up, which is why it's important for you guys to kind of go out and explore things on your own, whether that be through YouTube, getting different courses, or having a mentor, whatever it may be to point you in the right direction. It's always beneficial to have. Software doesn't matter as much as art fundamentals. This is something that I found out pretty quick. I started with Maya, and that's what I used previously at Southwest College. I used Maya for about 5 years. And then I recently, in the past year and a half, I kind of transitioned to Blender. But I've also had to use tools like 3ds Max in different art tests, which, you know, I've never touched 3ds Max. So that was definitely a challenge. But what really helped me was I understood the fundamentals, So the best way to kind of think about it is, you're driving a new car. You know where you know how to drive a car, but you don't know where the things are located. So it's kind of the same sort of stuff. So as long as you're good with art fundamentals, I wouldn't really worry too much about the software that you use. Then learning technical stuff helps hit the ground running. Sorry, I was just getting a drink. Learning technical stuff, a lot of times college doesn't teach you that. So when somebody new comes into the industry and they know things like LODs and setting up collisions and doing different optimization tricks, it really kind of gives you those brownie points, and it allows you to focus more on the work than just asking people and not necessarily holding back people, but it definitely makes you feel like you know what you're doing, which that goes into the next point. Imposter syndrome is alive and well. The first, I'd say, month and a half, probably more, and hell, even to this day, I feel like I shouldn't be where I am because I don't know what I'm doing. I use Google for like most of my answers, but that's just part of the process. Nobody knows what the hell they're doing. They just kind of show up to work and they're like, okay, I'm making cool things. And that kind of goes into junior. And, as a junior, you're not meant to know everything, but enough for you to do your job. And that's kind of important. Always ask questions. That is something that I recently talked to a friend of mine, which they were kind of hesitant about asking different questions, being perceived as, annoying to somebody or those sort of things. So don't be afraid of asking questions. Don't be afraid to kind of ask for help, because at the end of the day, as a junior, you're not meant to know everything. So this is something that I kind of believe got me where I am, and looking at other people got them where they are. So being at the right place at the right time. This kind of works 33% art, 33% personality, and 33% networking. I know that is 99%, but yeah, math. So it's important to kind of have all of these three. And I feel like if you hit it in the middle where you have all three, that's where you're going to get the most results. Being good at art and being well known might be beneficial, but if you're not a nice person to work with, then a lot of people won't work with you. Same could be said about being really nice to work with and knowing people, but if you're not that good at art, people mightn't employ you, and so on and so forth. So then, how do you get better at these things? Networking isn't who you know, but it's who knows you. And the best way to kind of do this is Discord communities, RStation, Twitter, and just kind of talking to people and getting your name out there so people know who you are. These are some Discord communities that I would recommend joining if you haven't already. Some are big, some are small, some are private, but it's good to kind of be everywhere and everybody kind of knowing who you are and what you do. It goes a long way, especially whenever you join a company, because a lot of people might know you from those specific Discords. Next up, personality. Don't be a pain. Be easy to work with and respect people. Respect people the same way that you want to be respected. Nobody wants to work with people that, just are heavy to work with. I don't know what nicer way to put it. And yeah, just be yourself. Don't try to be anybody else. Don't be cocky. Just be you. Next up is art. Stay up to date with the latest stuff. A lot of students and kind of junior artists, I feel, kind of come out of the loop. And I know I kind of fell within this, especially with my portfolio. But staying on top of like the latest things and looking at the latest like Unreal dropped or Substance Painter patch or whatever it may be, because in that way you're always going to be on top of things. Meanwhile, seniors and leads might be a bit too busy to do that. So when people ask for help or people are unsure about the new update and what they bring, you can always tell them all the new stuff that are in, and kind of use that to your own advantage to make your work look better. Next, showcase what you want to work on. I see a lot of people kind of being very too sure what the proper word would be, but very concerned about what they're making. Always asking, like, not being sure what to have on their portfolio, what not to have. My rule of thumb is make the stuff that you want to make, whether that be weapons, whether that be environments, props, characters, whatever it may be. Make the stuff that you want to make as a job, but also hint at other things that you might be interested in. For me, that was weapon art, which this is the portfolio that I had whenever I applied for Sumo and other places as well. So I had 2 environments, 2 props, and then I hinted at my passion for making weapons, which has been brought up in a lot of different interviews, and a lot of people were kind of happy that I had something in there to kind of showcase as another passion. But definitely put it at the back of your portfolio. Don't put it at the front. All the work that you don't fully want people to kind of look at, they're obviously going to look at everything, but usually the first couple of pieces are the pieces that are like, okay, this is what that person wants to do. So now that you've got a portfolio, your personality is mint, and people know you. How do you get your stuff seen? So how do you put your art out there? So yet again, Twitter, RStation, Discord, always posting at the same sort of time. What I find works for me is posting between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. UK time. Now, the reason behind that is it hits almost all the different time zones at the same time. So usually I would post my stuff around then. That would hit UK, some East Coast, and then you also have Europe and some parts of Asia. And then after a couple of days, I would then retweet the tweet that I did, which then that would put it up again on the on people's radar. And a lot of people like seeing work in progress and weekly updates. And that's something that I kind of found with that Ghost Town scene was I kind of stuck to I think it was every Monday. Yeah, I think it was every Monday. Just kind of updating where I was with the scene, even if it was like a small change or whatever it may be. People liked seeing that, and it kind of anticipated things for kind of like the final reveal. Feedback is very important, and it's something that a lot of people kind of shy away from. It is important to always get feedback, because you're so focused on your work that you start not forgetting, but overlooking small things that might take away from the bigger picture. So having a fresh pair of eyes definitely helps you know what's wrong with the work that you're doing. But with that being said, it is important to kind of detach yourself from your work. Once you're in the industry, you're not necessarily going to be doing what you want to be doing per se. You're working for somebody else and they're giving you a brief kind of stick on, right? So you might want to do a barrel, but you're going to do a barrel, right? So detaching yourself from your work definitely helps getting that feedback and that mental sort of barrier that you kind of put making stuff. But with that being said, feedback is also very subjective, and not all feedback is good feedback. So it is important to kind of, if you feel like the thing that you did is right, but somebody else says it's not, then it might be worth just keeping that feedback in the back of your head. But if other people start bringing that up too, then that means that, something is wrong and you need to change it. This kind of goes in hand with the artistic eye and skill. So a lot of times people know what looks good, but doesn't know how to kind of recreate it. And vice versa, knows how to recreate it, but doesn't know what looks good. And learning is definitely not a straight line. There will be times where you feel good and bad about your art. And that is just kind of the nature of it. You kind of get to a stage where your skill set kind of reaches a certain point, but then your artistic eye kind of goes far beyond that. And then you look at your stuff and it's like, oh, why does this not look as good as I first thought it did? So the best way to kind of increase your knowledge is to study. The best way to increase your skill is to practice. So just keeping on top of it. If you want to kind of train your eye to pick up little like details or whatever, study other work, look at what other people are doing. Better artists than you, see what their like artwork looks like and how they got that detail and all that fun stuff. But if you get to a point where you can't recreate that, then I suggest kind of practicing, whether that be hard surface, organic, sculpting, whatever it may be. Practice that so then you can do the things that you want to do. Finally, we're going to end it on mental health. This is something that is very important to me. And art is very taxing. Being creative is very, very exhausting, especially, you get those heavy kind of workloads where it's not so much physical, it's very mental, and then you come home and you're just drained, right? So making sure that you take enough time to take care of yourself is very important. Take time to focus on yourself. And I hear a lot of people saying, oh, I don't have time to to work on myself, or I don't have time to do this or that or the other. But the best way that I kind of think about it is, you're coming home and your toilet's broke, right? Nobody has time to go call a plumber and do all that stuff, right? But you make time for it because it becomes a priority. And I kind of think of it the same way with like mental health. Is like, nobody wants to take time off from the things that you enjoy. And, I personally really enjoy working, but I know that I have to kind of pull myself out of there for my own mental health in the long run, not so much the short run. Always reach out to the people around you. There's been so many friends, family, even strangers that have helped me when I felt very anxious or very down or anything about my art. So having people around you is very important, and don't be afraid to reach out to people. That also includes myself. If any of you guys here want to reach out, you can reach me on Discord, Twitter, our station, hell, even email if you want. But yeah, it's important to talk to somebody. And lastly, burnout will happen, whether that be in college, your gap year, first week of industry, even seniors, leads. Sometimes burnout will hit you, and it is important to identify it early. So it's the earlier you kind of identify it, the quicker that feeling kind of goes away, I find. Yet again, this is my personal experience. But from talking to everybody at work and friends outside and stuff, it definitely hits you at least once in your career. So some signs of burnout are things like feeling very exhausted after doing something, dreading to do things. My favorite word now from Nyla is chirometer going down, and feeling very like restless. So usually whenever I feel some of these symptoms, I usually just, whatever it is that I did that day, I would kind of try and take it easy the next couple of days. just to make sure I'm not kind of hitting that burnout. So some of the actions to stop it, yet again, these are things that helped me. It might be different to you guys. So things like getting enough sleep, try sticking to a schedule, yet again, kind of going back to, having that routine, make time for yourself and have hobbies and really kind of stick to them. That's something that I kind of regret sacrificing a lot of, is like hobbies and sports. Like instead of going out rugby with the guys, I'd kind of be inside and doing 3D and stuff, which did help me, but at the same time, at what sort of sacrifice? Some useful resources that I personally found was the Game Artist book by Paul Jones. It is a fantastic book about just career in general, anywhere from career. I don't really know how much to go into it. Another thing on ArtStation Learning, there's a lot of really good courses, but two of the ones that really kind of stuck out to me was Kieran Goodson's course, which was just fantastic on portfolios, cover letters, and just interview tips. A lot of the stuff that he mentions really kind of stuck with me and really helped me kind of elevate my sort of profile and everything. And then, Alex Beddoes also did things you need to know. So pre-industry, junior artist. There's also a mid and a senior, I believe. But all of these are really good links, and I can put them in the chat after this talk. They definitely helped me a ton. And that's kind of all I have for you today. I know this was kind of very word heavy, but I hope that at least it helps somebody in here. And as I said, if any of you need help with anything or want to reach out or even just talk about, I don't know, games, just reach out. I'm always happy to help where I can. I don't know about that one, Paul.
Dude, anime.
I'm not a connoisseur in anime, so...
that was amazing, dude. That was really, really, really good to listen to. It was packed full of really useful information. Your socials are in the text channel above where we are. So your ArtStation and your Twitter are there for anyone that isn't following Alex. I would highly recommend dropping him a follow. So much information, so many good points covered in there. It was really nostalgic for me because every time you showed a piece of work, I was like, I remember that. I remember that. Yeah. I remember sitting in calls with you with Beddoes and Jason Ord. Do you remember with that Sony tape recorder?
Yeah.
Going through feedback sessions, going like, "Oh, your red color is off. Your dust is too subtle." It's just nothing but memories after memories. It's really good. But there's lots of really. I think the mental health stuff, excuse me, is particularly important. It's something that's often overlooked in a lot of these discussions, and I think, as artists, as you mentioned yourself, it's super important to take care of yourself in terms of like taking breaks, and I think sleep and all the things you talked about are really, really, really important. There's some questions, so we will go through these quickly, but there's a couple. So the first one's from Steve. To give students some insight into sort of your process, can you talk about your experiences on creating personal projects, how they benefited you, and how each project focused on exploring something new? So you talked about this a little bit in terms of like, one of the things I think that characterized you as a student to me is that you didn't settle for just the stuff I was showing you. You were constantly trying to like go beyond that and, push yourself further, and like that's something I'll always remember about you as a student. So maybe just if you want to talk a little bit about like that drive and just the whole personal projects and how you like explored things and how you kind of attached sort of learning to each of your projects and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So with personal projects, I try to kind of keep like a theme to it, I guess, or a category. So like one environment I would go like really trim sheet, like heavy, or one environment I'd go very hard surface, or a prop going into very kind of detailed texturing, because to me that sets a goal in mind. So art is never finished. You know, you could be sitting there doing a piece of art for the next 30 years and you're still not going to be happy with it, right? And that's something that's very kind of prevalent within the industry. You know, it's not like people don't want it when it's done, they want it by a certain date, right? So having yourself a goal of like, okay, I want to learn how to utilize secondary UVs, right? Once you kind of go through that process and you learn that thing, then that piece is kind of done. You know, you've set yourself an objective, you went and looked for it, and then you finished it. Even if the piece gets shelved, you still learned a lot of things about it. And having that sort of category pair, like, environment or 3D asset or whatever really kind of helps you be okay with not finishing stuff. Because usually it's like, oh, I really need to get this finished, but you know, like, you're never going to be finished with it because there's always something wrong, there's always values off, or depending on who you ask, different people might have different feedback, which yet again, that goes back to the point of not all feedback is good feedback. Some people might like it red, you might like it blue, you know.
There's subjective feedback and there's, like, I guess, technical feedback. So it's important to know the difference for sure as well. I think what you're saying is very true, and I always compare, like, learning techniques and stuff as kind of like adding ingredients to your repertoire. Like, as a chef, the more sort of like seasonings that you're aware of, the more things you can add into your dishes, and you can kind of pick and choose as you develop your skills. So I think that's a really good way of looking at it as well. Okay. The second question was a meme, but it's basically why I was your favorite shooter. Okay, next question.
What you're talking about.
So can you talk a little bit about balance? So balance while learning. This always interests me. So you obviously had a time plan. But you were always, again, sort of going back to, like, you know, your time with me at the college, you were always very, I think, sort of organized, and definitely motivated. I see a lot of students that kind of struggle with, you know, motivation. They get, like, frustrated with, I guess, the challenge. They get frustrated with things not working. They get frustrated with trying to manage their time between, like, you know, maybe like a part-time job and university, which is never easy. You know, there's a lot of things that you have to juggle. But was there any kind of tips or advice you could give to people around that sort of those areas?
So for me, it was difficult, I guess, trying to find that balance, because, you know, at the time of starting college and stuff, I did have a job. I did kind of take care of family members, and you know, that was putting a lot of strain on kind of like mentally kind of learning. So some actions that I took, which for better or for worse, at the time I quit my job. At the time I started like distancing myself from a lot of people to kind of have more time to focus on the things that kind of mattered to me, which to me at the time was making the best art that I can, and trying to get into the industry. Having that time plan there allowed me to, so I had it split with, like, I'd work a couple of hours on portfolio or a couple of hours on my FMP, or but when I would start it, if I really wasn't feeling it, I would usually put like a timer of 15 minutes and really try to do work in that 15 minutes. And if I wasn't feeling it afterwards, then I'll just step away from it. You know, so kind of forcing myself for that 15, 20 minutes. And then if I didn't get into like the swing of things, then I would just kind of be like, okay, I'm going to go, I don't know, play something for a little bit, come back to it, try it again. And then kind of doing that until I got into the swing of things. And that's why it's kind of important to have, like, motivation only gets you so much. You know, you're not always going to be motivated to do something. It's the same as going to the gym. Nobody likes going to the gym.
Tell me about it, bro.
Sure, like, you might have like 4 a.m. It's like, yeah, let's go, let's do a run or whatever, you know. But then afterwards, that just kind of runs off, and you're never going to see it for another week or two, right? So having that kind of discipline allows you to always stick to that schedule even when you're not feeling it.
Yeah, motivation is definitely not a constant. I've written about that on
Yeah.
my own blog about motivation as an artist, and I think it's definitely something that people aren't aware of. Like people kind of think some people are just constantly motivated. I don't think any artist is constantly motivated. I think
Yeah, no,
everyone has
definitely not.
periods. Yeah, everyone has periods where it's just like I just can't be asked. I want to chill out, play games, go for a walk, do whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Next question I think has been answered. So it's pretty much about advice for looking for jobs and about getting your first job. You've went through quite a lot of that in the slides already, so I'm not gonna maybe revisit that again. That'll be in the slides for people to look at. Are there any other questions? That is discussion. I think that might be actually it. Your links are there. Your portfolio is there. Yeah, I think that's everything, Alex. So yeah, if you could post those links that you talked about, the
Yeah.
talks from Kieran and Alex, if you they're there already. Never mind, they're already in the chat. So just thank you very much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. That's a super useful resource, which we'll obviously be sharing through the XYZ community, and I know my own students will get a lot from it. And I think anyone here that's looking for work or even just going through a period where they're processing their portfolio or trying to progress within their careers, I think there's knowledge and stuff there that's very, very, very useful. So I just want to say thank you again for taking the time to speak with everyone. I really, really appreciate it, dude.
Yeah, no worries. It was my pleasure, and I'm happy to kind of give back to the people that helped me,
Awesome.
And yet again, just real. Oh, I can't speak now. Just if you guys do want to reach out, or if you need feedback on anything, or just want to talk, or whatever it may be, I am available, and you're more than welcome to reach out to me.